In this video, we're going to download CentOS and install it on a VirtualBox VM. So let's type CentOS into Google, and it's going to be the first option there. We're going to click on CentOS, and this is the CentOS homepage, and we want to click on the Get CentOS Now button, which is going to be the big bright orange button. There's three options: the DVD ISO, the everything ISO, and the minimal ISO. So we're just going to click on the DVD ISO, which has got the most common packages. And so here we're going to select any of these mirrors, which is basically a list of websites that host the same DVD image. And then we'll wait for it to download. It's probably going to take a while. It is a 4 gig file. So once that's finished, it'll be in your downloads folder. Now we're going to hop over to VirtualBox. We're going to create a new VM, and we'll name it whatever we want to at this point. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. The type is Linux, and the version is Red Hat 64-bit. We're going to click on Next. Memory size, it defaults to 1 gig, which will be fine, especially for this purpose. We don't want to use up a whole lot of RAM. The next option is to create a hard disk to go with our VM, which it's basically useless without that. So we're going to do that. This is the type. The default VirtualBox disk image is what we want to use. And dynamically allocated is the next option, which is good for saving on disk space. It doesn't allocate the disk file all at one time. It only grows as you add stuff to the disk image. By default, it's going to use an 8 gig disk image. We can adjust that, but for this purpose it is fine. So once we do that, now we're taken back to the overview screen for the VirtualBox Manager. Here we can check everything to make sure that it's indeed what we wanted it to be set at. The one thing we want to do here is under the storage portion, we want to click on the optical drive, and we'll click on Choose Disk Image and select our CentOS ISO DVD that's in our Downloads directory, and click on Open. So that essentially inserts the virtual DVD drive or disk into our drive. And we want to select the network option so that we can change the type of network that the adapter is going to be connected to. It defaults to NAT, but let's change it to a NAT network, which is a lot more flexible. There's the network that it's going to be using, and so that's going to be a virtual network that's separate from the network that our host machine that's running VirtualBox is on. So now we're going to click on Start, and it will start the virtual machine. In the boot options of the VM, the order is CD-ROM first and then the hard drive, so it's going to see the CD-ROM. Here's the first screen you're going to see, so we're going to select Install CentOS Linux 7 and hit Enter. You do have to arrow up and select that. By default, the Test CentOS 7 option is selected, and it takes forever, and it's really not necessary. So we're going to let this thing boot now. It will take a little bit longer than your typical boot, simply because it's booting from the virtual CD-ROM. So you've got that lag time from essentially the ISO being transferred through the VirtualBox interface. So this is still more the boot up process. It's the text shell. When it's finished, we'll be booted to a GUI, which is called Anaconda, and it'll allow us to start our configuration of the operating system. So the welcome screen here, we select our language and click on Next. Sorry, that's off the screen. Once we do that, the next thing that I recommend doing is going ahead and set the date, time, and the time zone that you're in. So that way when the virtual machine boots up, it'll already have the correct time and you don't have to worry about setting it afterwards. Click done. The next thing we want to do is click on the network and host name. And down in the lower left hand corner, the host name field, we want to set that to whatever we want to call our server, and it's fully qualified, so we want to do the host name dot domain name. And so we're just going to pick an internal domain name. So it's, in this case, it's going to be called server01.home.local. We go up to the slider at the top right hand side and slide that over to on, and that turns the Ethernet adapter on. You can see we've got DHCP on our network, and we have an address automatically. So for this purpose, we'll just use that since it's easy. Click on configure. You have to go to general and select this automatically connect to this network when it's available, and then click save. If you don't do that, then when the VM boots up for the first time, it won't be connected to the network. I do not know why that's not a default option, but nevertheless. So we're going to click on installation destination. We've got our 8 gig disk here selected, and we want to make sure automatically configure partitioning is selected, and click done. We'll go over in a future video the more detailed manual disk partitioning. Alright, so at this point we're installing. During that install process, we have to set a root password. So you'll see the status down here in the bottom, and we can go ahead and click on root password, and we want to type in a password of our choosing twice, and it'll also tell you here whether it's a weak or strong password. You can pretty much use whatever you want. If it's a weak password, it'll say, are you sure you want to use it? So you may have to click a button twice in order to make it take it, but it will take it. Click done here, and then we sit and wait, and we're basically waiting for a complete status message, and we're still installing packages. Now we've moved on to the post installation setup. We're going to install the bootloader. Getting close now. As you can see, there was also a user creation option that we did not select. That's to create another user outside of the default root user. Here we go. Now we're complete. We're going to select and click the reboot button, and that's essentially going to restart the VirtualBox VM. And so here we're just waiting for the VM to finish, so it's unloading all the modules that was loaded from the DVD, and then you will eventually see the Oracle VirtualBox splash screen. That's called the post screen. Now we've got an option here of selecting CentOS Linux, and then the bottom one is rescue mode in case something happens and you needed to, so let's say you forgot your root password, you could select that bottom option and go into rescue mode, and you could reset the root password and do other maintenance items. So now once we get finished booting, you'll come to a prompt. You'll see the server name with the login. So we used we set up our root password during the install, so we're going to use root here to log in, and then the password that we set during that setup screen. And then once we log in successfully, we should have a prompt. There we have it.